Rico Alvarez, the young mechanic with fire. Melanie Parker, the relentless journalist. Naomi Keller, the whistleblower cop. Micah Carter, the ghost returned. Jeremiah Carter, the quiet hero.
Jeremiah Carter never asked for attention. At 72, the black trolley driver simply did his job, guiding passengers along Meridian City's Line 12 with quiet dignity and unwavering punctuality. He was the kind of man people depended on without realizing it. He spoke little, kept his uniform crisp, and drove with the steady hands of someone who believed in order, routine, and respect. For 3 decades, Jeremiah had shown up before dawn, nodded to dispatchers, checked his trolley with military precision, and greeted strangers like neighbors. Line 12 wasn't just his route, it was his lifeline. Through neighborhoods changing faster than rent prices, he remained constant. Until the day he stood up. It began like any other Tuesday. The streets were still yawning under pale dawn light as hospital night shifters and dishwashers climbed aboard, dropping fares into the box and offering Jeremiah quiet greetings. He responded with simple nods and the occasional, "Morning now." He knew their faces. Their stories. Their fatigue. By 9:30 a.m., the trolley carried its usual human mosaic: tired moms with strollers, teens with earbuds, bankers with briefcases, elders with tightly clutched shopping bags. Jeremiah maintained the peace with the same silent authority he always had. Then, at the West 19th and King stop, a man boarded. Tall. Gaunt. Unsteady on his feet. The faint smell of liquor followed him as he dropped his fare and walked past Jeremiah without a word. The man, later identified as Trent Walker, chose a seat behind a young Latina mother holding a sleeping toddler. At first, he said nothing. But soon, a mutter began. "They take everything, jobs, housing, filthy foreigners." Jeremiah watched the man in the mirror. The mother kept her gaze forward, arms tightening around her child. Other passengers pretended not to hear. Eyes down. Phones up. "Hey," Walker snapped. "You hear me? Speak English or get the hell out." Jeremiah pulled into the next stop, calmly engaged the brake, stood, and turned toward the aisle. "Sir," he said evenly, "we've got a sleeping child. Please lower your voice." Walker glared. "Mind your business, old man. I paid my fare." "You did," Jeremiah agreed. "And that fare gives you a ride, not the right to disturb others. If this continues, I'll have to ask you to exit." "You threatening me?" Walker rose, towering above the mother. The toddler stirred and began to whimper. "No threats," Jeremiah replied, eyes hardening. "Just city policy." What Jeremiah didn't see was a man seated near the rear, whispering into his phone. "Yeah, there's a situation on the 12, aggressive black male, threatening people. Near West 19th. Moments later, Walker, spurred by another passenger urging him to leave, stormed off the trolley. Jeremiah turned to the mother. "You okay, miss?" She nodded, holding her now crying child close. "Thank you," she whispered. The trolley continued. 2 stops later, a police cruiser appeared beside the trolley. Lights on. Siren silent. Jeremiah sighed, probably just routine. Then Officer Todd Armand stormed up the steps, hand twitching near his holstered gun. "Driver. Step off the vehicle now." Jeremiah blinked. "Officer, is something wrong?" "There was a passenger earlier, he's gone now." "Hands where I can see them." "Now." Officer Naomi Keller followed Armin up the steps, more cautious, but equally tense. Jeremiah raised his hands, calm but confused. "I'm complying. Let me just secure the brake." "Now." Armin barked. Jeremiah flipped the switches, stood, and stepped onto the pavement. The moment his foot hit the sidewalk, Armin grabbed his shoulder and slammed him against the side of the trolley. "What is this about?" Jeremiah asked, voice strained. "We got reports of a hostile black male threatening passengers," Armin growled, wrenching his arms behind him. "I'm the driver." The man left. "I didn't do anything." "Stop resisting." "I'm not resisting." Inside the trolley, passengers pressed against the windows. Some shouted. Some recorded. The young mother rushed off. "Officers! That's the driver. He protected us from a drunk man." "Stay back, ma'am. This is police business," Armin barked. Jeremiah's face scraped the pavement. Blood trickled from his lip. His ribs flared with pain. Across the street, a teenager live-streamed the entire arrest. Jeremiah, face down on the concrete, turned his head just enough to meet the lens of the teen's phone. "Tell Luis what happened," he managed to whisper. Then the cruiser door slammed, and he was gone. Hours later, after fingerprints, mug shots, and a long wait in a holding cell that smelled like bleach and rust, Jeremiah Carter was released with 6 words. "No charges. You're free to go. No apology. No explanation. Just a thin piece of paper and a tired officer who couldn't even make eye contact." He stepped out into the fading afternoon light, his shoulders hunched more from shame than pain. His ribs ached with every breath. His lip had stopped bleeding, but it throbbed, a dull, persistent reminder of humiliation. Jeremiah didn't go to the transit authority. Didn't call his supervisor. Just phoned in sick and took the long walk home. Past corner stores with busted neon. Past barbershops where men spoke low about bad cops and worse days. Past the memorial mural of his late wife Lottie, painted lovingly on the side of the old community center. At home, he sat on the porch and let the day slip away. He didn't notice the black SUV across the street, engine idling, windows dark. He didn't know someone was watching. Thousands of miles away, deep in the frozen wilderness of Wyoming's Wind River Range, Micah Carter sat in a cabin with no address, no internet, and no neighbors. For years, it had been his sanctuary. On his laptop, a video looped, stolen from the dark web, recovered from a mirror site after being wiped from every social media platform within hours of going viral. Jeremiah Carter, face down, cuffed, bloodied. Knees on his back. The crowd yelling. The mother crying. Micah's hands, trained for the unthinkable, stopped moving. The man who had once been the most feared sniper in Recon Marine Group Echo 3 didn't flinch from violence. But this? This was different. This was home. He clicked a key. Froze the frame. His father's blood-staining city pavement. Micah stood slowly and walked to the wall where maps of American cities were pinned next to old photos of foreign combat zones. One by one, he removed the covers from locked cases, surveillance drones, encrypted radios, compact rifles broken into sections like puzzle pieces. He picked up a sat phone, dusted it off, and dialed a number he hadn't used in 4 years. 3 rings. "Melanie Parker," came the voice on the line. Clipped. Controlled. "It's me." A beat of silence. "I thought we agreed." They laid hands on my father. Everything changed in that moment. The voice that followed no longer belonged to a journalist. "What happened?" As he told her, Micah moved around the cabin, collecting what he needed: forged IDs, multiple license plates, burner phones, a folded photograph of Jeremiah and Lottie at their 40th anniversary. It went into his duffel. "You know what you're walking into," Melanie said when he finished. "They don't." Back in the city, Jeremiah returned to the District 8 precinct 3 days later, clutching a file folder with stiff fingers. His bruises had begun to turn yellow, but the ache inside hadn't dulled. He stepped up to the front desk. "I'd like to file a complaint," he said, voice quiet. Regarding my arrest. The young officer barely looked up. Forms there, he said, pointing to a stack on the counter. Jeremiah filled it out with care, his pen moving slowly, deliberately. When he handed it back, the officer skimmed it like it was a parking ticket. We'll review it. You'll hear back if necessary. Jeremiah cleared his throat. Can I ask when? The officer finally looked up, face blank. You want advice, old man? Walk away. People who push this stuff don't usually like where it ends. Jeremiah straightened. His spine hurt, but he refused to bend. I just want it on record. It's on record. Now move along. He walked out, alone. Officer Naomi Keller sat in her parked cruiser long after her shift ended. The manila folder beside her on the seat contained copies of internal memos, body cam request logs that mysteriously went missing, and notes on prior excessive force complaints against Officer Todd Arman. Next to it sat a small voice recorder. Still blinking red. She'd recorded the entire conversation in the break room 2 nights ago, Arman laughing about putting that trolley fossil in his place, Renshaw brushing it off with a smirk. Next time, the captain had said, make sure nobody's filming. Her phone buzzed. A text from Arman. Drinks tonight. Captain's orders. Team building. She looked at the recorder again. Then out the windshield. Then back at the folder. She wasn't sure if she was building a case or building a shield for herself. Either way, she was in too deep to pretend nothing had happened. Downtown, in a cozy, upscale cafe filled with laptop screens and clinking spoons, Melanie Parker leaned in across the table from Nina Renshaw, a 22-year-old criminal justice student and activist. The daughter of the precinct's captain. You know why I asked to meet, Melanie said, voice low. Yeah, Nina replied. It's about my father. Melanie nodded. Vanguard Sentinel Solutions. The contracts your dad's precinct signed. The increased police presence. The confiscated phones. Deleted videos. You think he's behind all of it? I think your community knows more than you realize. And they're scared. Nina hesitated, then said, there's a server. Not official. Hidden. My friend said it's where they dump internal footage they don't want anyone to see. Melanie's eyes narrowed. Does it include what happened to Jeremiah Carter? I think so. I heard his name at a town hall. They didn't say much. Just, elderly black trolley driver. Assaulted. No charges filed. Was that Arman's work? Melanie nodded. Nina leaned forward. I'll find out what I can. Neither noticed the man in the far corner, face obscured by a ball cap, stirring his coffee as he watched without watching. That evening, Jeremiah sat on his porch, sipping weak tea. The street was quiet. A wind rustled the overgrown hedges. His hand trembled when he lifted the mug. He thought of Micah, not the trained killer, not the classified ghost, but the child who used to collect pine cones and tell stories about birds. The boy who left after September 11th, and returned looking like someone else. The argument that ended it all echoed like a gunshot still ringing in his ears. You don't know what it's like out there. You don't have to bring war into our home. Then silence. Years of it. He was so lost in thought, he didn't notice the small white envelope on his welcome mat until the breeze flipped its edge. No stamp. No address. Just his name in familiar, precise handwriting. He opened it with trembling hands. You don't have to stand alone anymore. Jeremiah Carter sat back in his chair, the letter in his lap. And for the first time since the incident on the trolley, he wept. In a nondescript motel on the edge of East Meridian's industrial zone, Micah Carter assembled the pieces of war like a man piecing together a forgotten self. 3 phones with scrambled SIMs. A rugged laptop, firewalled and routed through multiple VPNs, topographical maps of the city laid out in layers, highlighting the precinct, Jeremiah's house, Officer Todd Armand's residence, and the downtown office of Captain Barry Renshaw. Micah moved with quiet purpose. A tactical vest lay on the bed, next to folded civilian clothing in neutral tones. Beside it, a locked case contained gear no civilian would recognize: low-frequency jammers, fiber scopes, surveillance relays, sonic mics. He didn't prepare like a man seeking vengeance. He prepared like a man going to war. His phone buzzed. A secure text, untraceable. "She's interested. Meeting confirmed. Watch your back. Ghost is in play." Micah stared at the screen. Then typed one word. Copy. Ghost. He hadn't heard the name in years. The codename belonged to the handler who had overseen his darkest assignments. A man whose presence was felt more than seen, whose voice gave orders others wouldn't repeat. If Ghost was involved, this wasn't just about corruption anymore. It was about control. That same morning, Officer Naomi Keller left her apartment just before dawn. The parking lot was dim, the glow of the street lamps painting her car in long, pale shadows. She didn't see the figure who had watched from across the lot all night. Micah sat 3 cars down in a borrowed sedan, engine cold, eyes fixed. He didn't approach. He didn't need to. As she opened the door and started the ignition, her radio stuttered, cutting off her morning show, switching stations, then snapping to silence. Static. Then a pause. Then a voice, warped through digital filters. "He will fall. You still have time to choose a side." Naomi slammed the brakes, heart leaping into her throat. She grabbed her phone, dialed the number back. It didn't exist. She checked her mirrors. No movement. No cars out of place. But something in her gut twisted. She was being watched. Across town, Officer Todd Armand began his patrol with jittery fingers gripping the steering wheel. His usual confidence had curdled into something paranoid. Too many whispers at the precinct. Too many glances. And that video, of him slamming an old man into a trolley. He was sure it had been deleted. So why did people keep looking at him like that? His radio buzzed. Unit 237, possible gang tag on Anderson Elementary. South Wall. Suspected activity nearby. Please respond. 237 responding, Armand said, seizing the distraction. He didn't know the dispatch was fake. Didn't know it was rerouted by Micah Carter through a secure tactical net. At the school, the wall had been freshly tagged. But no gangbangers were in sight. Just a group of black teens walking to class. Armand stepped out, hand near his sidearm. "Hey! You 3, stop!" The boys froze. "We didn't do anything," one said, voice cracking. Hands on the wall. "Now!" He cuffed them one by one, rough and hurried. What he didn't see was the discreet camera tucked beneath the school's rain gutter, planted by Micah before dawn. It captured everything. The baseless stop. The unnecessary force. The boys' fear. By mid-afternoon, that footage would arrive anonymously at Internal Affairs. Complaint number 4. In as many weeks. That night, Jeremiah Carter sat at his kitchen table, sipping tea that did little to ease the ache in his body. The house was still. Too still. He startled at the sound of tires crunching gravel outside. Through the window, he saw an unmarked cruiser glide past. No headlights. It slowed near his yard. The 3rd night in a row. Jeremiah drew the curtains, locked every door, and double-checked the baseball bat he now kept by his recliner. His bruises had begun to fade. But the dread hadn't. The next morning, he made his way to East Meridian Community College, where Nina Renshaw was hosting another legal aid session. The room was packed again, working-class folks with eviction papers, traffic tickets, custody cases. He waited until it emptied. "Nina," he said. She looked up. "Mr. Carter. I need help." He handed her the note that had been slipped under his door days earlier. The threat. The handwriting was all block letters, printed in black Sharpie. "Your mouth got your son killed once. Don't let it happen again." Nina's hands trembled slightly. This mentions your son." "My boy Micah," Jeremiah said quietly. "We haven't spoken in years. But he's not dead. Or at least, he wasn't. Last I knew." She scanned the room, then lowered her voice. "This is serious, Mr. Carter. My friend Spencer, he's in his final year at law school. He can walk us through filing a civil rights suit. We'll protect you." Jeremiah nodded once. Neither of them noticed the janitor pushing a mop near the door. His ball cap sat low, his earbuds silent. But his eyes never left them. Miles away, in a defunct subway maintenance tunnel beneath the city, a different kind of meeting took place. Ghost stood in front of a trembling man, ex-Marine, dishonorably discharged, pressed against a graffiti-covered wall. "You saw him," Ghost said. "I swear I didn't. You served with him. You know how he thinks. What he plans. What he's capable of." The man gasped, "He's a ghost. That's the point. If Micah Carter doesn't want to be found, you won't find him." Ghost let go, letting the man collapse to the concrete. "Everyone can be found," he muttered. "Everyone has a weakness." He straightened his jacket, dusted off his silver cufflinks, and checked his phone. He already knew what Micah's weakness was. His name was Jeremiah Carter. Inside the small downtown newsroom of the Independent Voice, Melanie Parker sat at her desk surrounded by stacks of paper, thumb drives, and half-drunk cups of coffee. On her monitor, property records, public contracts, internal police memos, each one weaving together a digital thread pointing to the same name again and again. Vanguard Sentinel Solutions. On paper, they were a private security contractor. But Melanie had seen this pattern before, overseas. What concerned her now was how closely Captain Barry Renshaw's precinct seemed to operate like a subsidiary. Shared assets. Shared surveillance systems. Personnel overlap. But the most damning document wasn't public. It was an internal budget file, mistakenly attached to a precinct meeting agenda that had briefly gone online before being pulled. It outlined purchases not just for riot gear, but for tactical drones, facial recognition software, and community control protocols. She picked up her secure phone. Micah answered on the first ring. "I found something," she said. "How bad?" "Worse. Vanguard isn't just supplying gear. They're building profiles. Mapping activists. Running silent surveillance on the community. I submitted a public records request and got a call from Homeland Security telling me to drop it for national security reasons. They're watching you." "Probably," Melanie said calmly. "But I'm still watching them." That night, in a quiet neighborhood tucked between downtown and the industrial corridor, Rico Alvarez, 19-year-old auto prodigy and former neighbor of Jeremiah Carter, walked home from a late shift at a local garage. He never saw the van. It pulled up slow. Men in plain clothes jumped out. No badges. No words. Just fists. By morning, Rico was found in an alley, beaten badly. His right arm broken. Bruises across his ribs and back. On his chest, someone had duct-taped a note. "Stay away from Carter." At Meridian General Hospital, Jeremiah sat beside Rico's bed, face pale with rage. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, eyes burning. "This is my fault." Rico stirred. His voice was cracked and weak. They asked about the videos. About Melanie. I didn't say nothing. You're braver than any man I know, Jeremiah said, his voice shaking. By the time he left the hospital, his mind was made up. No more waiting. No more silence. He called Nina Renshaw. She met him outside City Hall, where Melanie and a few sympathetic reporters had already gathered. At noon, Jeremiah Carter stood before the public, flanked by a journalist and the daughter of the man whose precinct had turned the city into a war zone. His voice, though quiet, carried like thunder across the hushed crowd. My name is Jeremiah Carter. I'm a trolley driver. A veteran. A father. He touched his still healing lip. Last week, I was arrested for doing my job. For standing between a mother and a man who was harassing her. I didn't fight. I didn't shout. I just stood up. He looked directly into the cameras. They thought I'd stay silent. Thought an old black man wouldn't fight back. They were wrong. He paused. My son is not a terrorist. But if they keep hurting people, he won't be the only one coming for them. The crowd rippled with murmurs. Then applause. From the far edge of the crowd, Micah Carter stood still, his hood up, watching his father speak with a fire he hadn't seen in years. Something inside him shifted. Pride. Pain. And a new resolve. He turned and walked away. There was still work to do. The next morning, the city awoke to tension hanging thick as fog. News vans circled City Hall. Commentators debated Jeremiah's words. Crowds grew outside the police precinct, holding handmade signs. Justice for Carter. No private police. This is our city. Inside the mayor's office, Mayor Evelyn Hartley gave a brief, carefully worded statement. We take all allegations seriously and have initiated a formal review of recent incidents. It satisfied no one. The city's patience had already worn thin. That evening, Nina Renshaw visited Jeremiah's home. You shouldn't be here, Jeremiah warned. They're watching me. They're watching me too, she said. My own father has someone following me. I know it. She lowered her voice. He said something to me last week. About a phase 2. I don't know what it means, but whatever it is, it's happening soon. Before Jeremiah could respond, his old police scanner, a relic from his neighborhood watch days, crackled to life. Units deploying to designated assets. Activate surveillance. Confirm readiness for containment. Phase 2 authorized. Jeremiah and Nina exchanged a look. The operation had already begun. Across town, in an abandoned mechanic's garage Micah had converted into a field post, the walls were now covered with photos, maps, and string, a full-scale network analysis of Vanguard's activities. Micah's phone buzzed. A message from Ree Blackwood, his former recon unit's comm specialist, now working off-grid as a digital ghost. Intercepted message, they're targeting the Southside Youth Center. Labeling it an insurgent hub. Raid imminent. ETA, 1,500 hours. Micah's jaw clenched. The youth center was where Rico volunteered. Where Nina mentored kids. Where protests were organized. This wasn't law enforcement. This was provocation. 3 miles from the Southside Youth Center, Officer Todd Arman crouched behind a dumpster, slipping a black backpack into the ventilation shaft at the rear of the building. His breath came in quick, excited bursts. Inside the backpack, a broken-down AR-15, a stack of anti-government pamphlets, and a burner phone loaded with inflammatory messages. All of it planted, ready to be discovered by the Vanguard Tactical Response Team later that afternoon. He was jittery, paranoid, and getting sloppier by the hour. He thought no one saw him. But from the rooftop of a nearby laundromat, Micah Carter watched through a scope, every movement logged, photographed, recorded. He could have taken the shot. He didn't. Instead, he reached for his phone and sent the pictures to Melanie Parker with one line. "Raid coming. Get the kids out." Melanie didn't hesitate. She was in her car, hotspot active, typing madly on her laptop with one hand and dialing with the other. She reached out to every contact at the youth center, every community leader, every organizer. The message was short. Leave. Now. She took a bigger risk next, calling the precinct and leaving a voice message for Officer Naomi Keller. "It's Parker. Armin's planting weapons. The raid is a setup. Kids are in danger. You know I'm not lying." Then she slammed the laptop shut and drove like hell. At exactly 3:02 p.m., 5 unmarked SUVs pulled up outside the Southside Youth Center. Men in full tactical gear flooded out, no name tags, no badge numbers. Helmets with tinted visors. Vanguard shield patches on their shoulders. They breached the building in under 30 seconds. What they didn't expect? The youth center was empty. Except for a camera. A hidden live stream set up broadcasting to tens of thousands. The footage went viral within minutes, masked paramilitary storming a community center with rifles raised. No warrant. No resistance. Just silence and overkill. The city watched. And it remembered. Instead of pulling back, Captain Barry Renshaw doubled down. By sunset, new checkpoints had popped up across Meridian. Tactical teams patrolled streets in armored trucks. Surveillance drones whirred overhead. Curfews were imposed in high-risk neighborhoods. But the people weren't afraid anymore. They were filming. Uploading. Sharing. Micah struck again that night. 3 Vanguard shield safehouses, used for coordination and gear storage, were simultaneously disrupted. Power cut. Communications jammed. Entrances sealed shut. No one was injured. But each site was left with a single message spray-painted on the door. "This war has rules. Break them, and I won't." He wasn't just attacking their logistics. He was establishing dominance. Meanwhile, in a secure downtown suite high above the chaos, Captain Renshaw stood before a wall of video feeds. Alongside him was a man with silver hair and glacier-cold eyes. Ghost. "They're calling him a hero now," Renshaw said, voice tight. "They always do," Ghost replied calmly, sipping black coffee. "Right before the city burns. We need him neutralized." Ghost turned to face him fully. Micah Carter was trained by the best. Renshaw bristled. "Including me," Ghost added. Then he smiled. But it didn't reach his eyes. Back at the Independent Voice, Melanie Parker dug deeper. She'd found old military records, unit rosters from Afghanistan. One name kept popping up. Barry Renshaw. Before he was a police captain, he had served in a private contractor unit under Ghost's direct command. She found records of a controversial op in Maidan Shar, dozens of civilian deaths, no accountability. The file was sealed. Buried. Right after that, Vanguard Shield was born. And now it was here. Melanie looked up from her computer. "I think, we're the prototype." Officer Naomi Keller sat alone in her apartment, the manila folder still on her table, her backup Glock beside it. The voice message from Melanie Parker echoed in her mind. "Armin's planting weapons. The raid is a setup. Kids are in danger." Naomi had seen enough already to believe it. Her laptop was open. The recordings she'd made over the past month were queued up. She hadn't meant to gather evidence at first, just insurance. But now the audio was undeniable. Captain Renshaw, in his own words. "Make an example of Carter. Make sure it sticks." And Officer Armin in the break room, bragging. "You should have seen the old bastard's face hit the trolley floor. Beautiful." She plugged in a flash drive. Clicked copy. She was done hiding. 2 nights later, Naomi Keller appeared on a live stream podcast, well known for its work exposing police misconduct. Her face was drawn. Her badge sat on the table between her and the host. My name is Naomi Keller. I've served 3 years with the East Meridian Police Department. And I'm here because I can't stay silent anymore. For 45 minutes, she laid it all out. Captain Renshaw's collusion with Vanguard. Orders to escalate community interactions. The targeted raid on Jeremiah Carter. Armin's behavior. The cover-ups. The lies. The final straw, she said, was hearing Renshaw tell Armin to make an example of a trolley driver who was just doing his job. The interview was clipped, shared, reposted thousands of times. Within hours, #IStandWithCarter began trending. By morning, Naomi Keller was both a hero and a target. In the emergency briefing room of the precinct, Captain Renshaw slammed his hand on the table. This is a coordinated smear job. Officers exchanged glances. They're manipulating our good work. You know what happens if they win? Chaos. He clicked the remote. A grainy image appeared on the screen, Micah Carter in military fatigues. This man is the ringleader. He's dangerous. Trained to kill. He's spreading disinformation and targeting our department. Naomi sat in the back, stone-faced. Renshaw continued, we consider him armed, unstable, and domestic threat level red. She didn't speak. But her decision was already made. Later that evening, Naomi sat in her car outside Melanie Parker's office, gripping the flash drive like it was radioactive. Her hands trembled. Her face was pale. Inside the drive was everything, full audio of Renshaw's orders, Armin's brags, internal emails. She walked inside. 20 minutes later, she walked out lighter, but with the full knowledge that her career was over. That night, Jeremiah Carter sat on his porch, watching shadows stretch across the cracked sidewalk. His neighborhood had grown quiet, too quiet. The city felt like it was holding its breath. His mind was elsewhere, on his son, his regrets, the fight that seemed so far from anything he thought he'd ever face in his 70s. A knock at the back door startled him. He moved slowly, cautiously, bat in hand. Who's there? A pause. It's me, Pop. The voice froze him. He unlocked the door. There stood Micah Carter, older, scarred, eyes hardened by war and loss. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Micah gave a small smile. You gonna invite me in? They sat in the kitchen where they once argued, where silence had grown roots. You saw the videos, Jeremiah said. It wasn't a question. Micah nodded. I should have been here. You had your reasons. Bad ones. Jeremiah poured tea. His hands shook slightly. Micah stared into the steam. I thought keeping my darkness out of this house meant staying away. But maybe it just meant letting them win. Jeremiah finally looked him in the eye. And now? They put hands on you. He didn't say more. He didn't have to. Jeremiah sighed. You planning something? Micah's voice was steady. Justice. There are proper channels. Like the complaint you filed that ended with a brick through your window? Silence. I'm not letting them hurt you again, Micah said. A noise from the front porch cut the moment. Micah moved, quiet as breath. He returned a minute later with another note. Keep your mouth shut or next time it won't be just a brick. Micah read it silently. His face changed, not with rage, but with icy calm. They have no idea who they're threatening. By dawn, a paper was nailed to the precinct's front door. In all capital letters, handwritten. Your sins are numbered. It broke at 6:03 a.m. The homepage of the Independent Voice exploded with the headline. Corruption in Blue, Police Department Tied to Private Military Contractor. By Melanie Parker. The piece was surgical, documented, cross-referenced, unflinching. It laid out a years-long pattern of abuse, cover-ups, and financial entanglement between the East Meridian Police Department and Vanguard Sentinel Solutions. Altered arrest reports. Suppressed body cam footage. Back-channel communications from Captain Barry Renshaw. And most damning, internal audio files from Officer Naomi Keller. By noon, it had gone national. By evening, the protest line stretched down 3 city blocks. People weren't just chanting for justice. They were demanding it. Inside the precinct, Renshaw stared at the wall-mounted TV as if it had personally betrayed him. His jaw clenched. His phone rang again, Mayor Hartley. He let it ring out. Then turned to his officers, now gathered in the ready room. "This is war," he growled. "A coordinated assault on our department." Some shifted uncomfortably. "You think those recordings are real?" "That's edited crap from a disgruntled officer." "She's been compromised." One younger officer dared to raise a hand. "Sir, with respect, it sounds like you." Renshaw's voice snapped like a whip. "I said it's fake." He clicked a remote. A grainy military photo filled the screen. Micah Carter. Recon. Black Ops. Discharged. Ghost trained. "This is your enemy," Renshaw said coldly. "And the media is helping him." That night, Naomi Keller didn't go home. She drove past her apartment 3 times before continuing to a safe house Melanie had arranged. She had every reason to feel scared. And every reason to keep going. In a quiet apartment across the city, Nina Renshaw sat frozen as she watched the press conference replay on local news. Her father stood before microphones, suit sharp, voice calm. "We have identified a former Special Forces sniper targeting police officers. He is mentally unstable, and we will not rest until he's apprehended." Nina muted the TV. Micah Carter wasn't unstable. He was what the city had become, tired of silence, sick of pretending, done with waiting. Her phone buzzed. A number she didn't recognize. She answered anyway. "Hello?" "It's Naomi Keller," came the voice. Shaky but firm. "I need help." Elsewhere, in a warehouse once used as a Vanguard field station, Micah Carter methodically disassembled a listening device and removed its transmitter. He was calm. Efficient. He wasn't just planning anymore. He was executing. On the wall behind him were new photographs, drone snapshots, intercepted emails, door access logs. His intel network had grown. And now it had a name. Phase 2, Domestic Containment Strategy. The next day, a black SUV pulled up outside Jeremiah Carter's home. The windows were tinted. The engine stayed running. A man in tactical gear got out and knocked. No badge. No ID. Jeremiah didn't answer the door. Instead, he watched from behind the curtain, holding the revolver he hadn't touched in 40 years. Hours later, Nina Renshaw met with Naomi in the back of an old diner. Naomi handed over a second flash drive. "This one has internal documents. Proof that Vanguard's tactics were modeled after urban pacification used in war zones. Ghost's name is all over it." Nina swallowed. "My father worked with him. Overseas. I found an old metal case. It had Vanguard's emblem, from before the company even officially existed." Naomi's eyes went cold. "This goes deeper than a rogue unit." Nina looked her dead in the eye. "We're not just fighting corruption anymore. We're fighting occupation." By midweek, Meridian City felt like a pressure cooker. Drone patrols buzzed over intersections. Tactical checkpoints appeared outside grocery stores and subway entrances. Parents walked their kids to school beneath watchful surveillance towers camouflaged as utility poles. The police department no longer acted alone. Vanguard's shield was now visible, black SUVs with no insignia, helmets with mirrored visors, rifles cradled like warnings. And behind it all stood one man. Ghost. His real name never made public record. No social media footprint. No rank patches. But within elite U.S. military circles, he was a myth, a tactician, a cleaner, a monster under the bed. And now, he sat comfortably in a glass-walled office high above downtown Meridian, facing Captain Barry Renshaw. "You failed to control the narrative," Ghost said simply, sipping from a mug with the Vanguard logo. "You let a low-level trolley driver and his war ghost of a son define the story." Renshaw bristled. "We're dealing with organized resistance now. Armed. Media supported." "That's not resistance," Ghost replied. "That's momentum." He stood and walked to the giant digital map covering one wall. Dots marked all recent public disruptions: school walkouts, sit-ins, protest lines, cyber leaks. "The longer this man is free," Ghost said, tapping a pin over Micah Carter's last known location, "the more control we lose." Renshaw looked up. "What do you suggest?" Ghost turned, smiling faintly. "We remind them what fear looks like." Across town, Melanie Parker arrived at a quiet parking garage, her laptop bag slung over one shoulder, her phone buzzing with tips. She was here to meet a source. But as she stepped onto the third level, something felt off. The footsteps didn't echo right. Too many of them. 3 men emerged, plain clothes, military posture, eyes cold. "You Melanie Parker?" the leader asked, voice flat. She reached for her pepper spray. "Didn't make it." The lead man lunged. And then screamed. Blood bloomed from his leg. No gunshot was heard, just the impact. Seconds later, the other two dropped in sync. Precise, silent, non-lethal shots to pressure points. From behind a concrete pillar, Micah Carter stepped into view, ghost silent and perfectly still. "You came," Melanie breathed, her knees starting to give. "You were stupid to come here alone," Micah said, already zip-tying the attackers. "I didn't have a choice." Micah looked at her, not as a weapon or an asset, but as someone still standing. "There's always a choice," he said quietly. "That's what makes us different from them." Back in Jeremiah Carter's kitchen, father and son faced each other under yellow light. "You're escalating a war," Jeremiah said, voice hoarse. "These people have systems, Micah. Power. Connections. This isn't Fallujah." "I know exactly what this is." Jeremiah slammed his palm on the counter. "Then act like it. You think bullets will fix what silence created?" Micah's voice was ice. "They put you on the pavement, Pop." Jeremiah stared at him. "So what? You burn it all down. They don't get to touch you and walk away. And if you kill them, what does that make you?" The room was quiet. Then Micah said the thing that scared his father most. "If I become like them, they'll never see me coming." Their standoff was broken by a knock at the front door. Micah froze, already reaching for the hidden weapon beneath his jacket. Jeremiah gestured him down. "Wait." He opened the door slowly. A man with graying temples and the air of a battlefield veteran stood calmly, hands raised. "Mr. Carter," he said. "My name is Ree Blackwood. I served with your son." Inside, Ree scanned the room, then unpacked a small signal-blocking device and swept the perimeter. Only once he was sure they weren't being listened to did he speak. "I've been helping Micah remotely. But things have escalated." Micah nodded. "What did you find?" Ree unzipped a pouch, pulling out a modified drive and a black tablet. "I got into Vanguard's private channels. They're preparing something called Operation Iron Veil. Micah leaned forward. Urban lockdown? Worse. Think foreign protocol, repurposed for domestic streets. They've got crowd control drones. Asset neutralization lists. False flag triggers. Targets? Ree looked at Jeremiah. You're top of the list. Jeremiah didn't flinch. So what do we do? Ree tapped the tablet screen. I need direct access to their command servers. Downtown tower, 37th floor. Once I breach, they'll know. I'll be burned. Micah nodded. I'll get you in. At dawn, Ree Blackwood and Micah Carter stood across the street from Vanguard Sentinel's headquarters, a sleek glass tower looming like a war monument. 37 floors up sat the command servers. Once breached, every tactical order, every hidden asset file, every dark contract would be exposed. But once they got in, there would be no hiding. You sure about this? Micah asked. Ree gave a small nod. I didn't survive 6 tours and 6 firings just to die on the sidelines. Micah handed him a miniature signal replicator. Plug it in. I'll handle the extraction. Ree smirked. Just like old times. 30 minutes later, dressed as a janitor and carrying a fake work order, Ree passed through the lobby. Micah watched from a parked van 2 blocks away, earpiece in place, hand near a manual override for Ree's exit route. But 6 minutes after Ree entered the elevator, the signal cut out. Micah's face darkened. Something was wrong. In a blacked-out surveillance room 5 floors below the Vanguard war room, Ghost stepped into the flickering light. Across from him sat Ree Blackwood. Bruised. Bound to a steel chair. But alive. You're still the best, Ghost said, examining Ree's tools with a blend of admiration and contempt. Still hacking empires with a thumb drive and a smirk. Ree spat blood to the floor. You haven't changed. Ghost leaned in close. And you haven't evolved. He turned to one of his operatives. Record. Send it to him. The camera light blinked red. Ghost stepped aside. Go on. Say something heroic. Ree lifted his chin. Micah. Don't come. It's a trap. Ghost pressed a pistol to Ree's knee. The scream that followed wasn't filtered. Back in the van, Micah's tablet lit up. Incoming transmission. A video file. No metadata. He opened it. The feed showed Ree in restraints, bloodied but defiant. Ghost's voice crackled off-screen. Bring yourself and your father to the old harbor warehouse at midnight. Just the 2 of you. Or he bleeds out in pieces. Micah's hands clenched. He didn't blink. He didn't curse. He just hit save. That night, Officer Naomi Keller left a community town hall where she'd spoken about police reform and whistleblower protections. For once, she felt a flicker of hope. People had cheered. Hugged her. Called her brave. She was halfway to her car when the bullet hit her shoulder. A silenced shot. Precision. Close range. She collapsed to the pavement, gasping. Through the pain, she saw the figure in the hoodie lower the weapon and walk calmly into the night. A bystander rushed to help. As sirens approached, Naomi's eyes fluttered. Armin, she whispered. Then darkness. At the hospital, Jeremiah Carter sat beside Naomi's bed, eyes damp with fury. You didn't have to do all this, he whispered. Her breathing was shallow, but steady. You were braver than most soldiers I've known, he said. Behind him, her monitor beeped softly. In a dim bedroom cluttered with monitors, cables, and discarded snack wrappers, Rico Alvarez, his arms still in a cast, worked feverishly with one hand. He had just finished uploading something massive. Micah had delivered him the full Vanguard hit list, names, photos, surveillance logs. At the top of the list. Jeremiah Carter, Priority 1, tonight. Rico posted it publicly with one caption. This is who they're hunting. This is who we're fighting. Within minutes, it had been shared across platforms. That night, in every neighborhood touched by injustice, people took to the streets, not with weapons, but with phones. Live streams. Banners. Floodlights. Every checkpoint. Every officer. Every vanguard truck. The people were watching. And they were done being quiet. Inside a crumbling church, Micah Carter sat in a pew as Jeremiah approached slowly from the rear. The stained glass windows painted soft light across them both. I never wanted you to carry this, Jeremiah said, voice trembling. This war. This weight. I was born in it, Micah replied. But I don't want to die in it. They sat in silence. Then Micah pulled out the printed hit list. Ree's photo. Naomi's injuries. Rico's face, swollen. I can't wait for them to stop, he said. We have to move. Jeremiah stared ahead. Then, softly, then let's move together. The harbor was quiet, too quiet for a Thursday night. The old Pacific Freight warehouse, once used for fish processing, now stood as a rusted skeleton against the waterline. Its broken windows stared blankly at the city skyline like hollow eyes. Micah Carter arrived at 11:47 p.m. No weapon drawn. No tactical vest. Just a plain gray jacket, jeans, and calm. Beside him walked Jeremiah, silent, jaw set, a worn duffel in his hand. Inside the duffel, a basic med kit, rope, and a concealed surveillance relay hidden inside a hollowed-out thermos. Micah wasn't here to surrender. He was here to document. They entered the warehouse slowly. A single floodlight snapped on overhead, throwing hard shadows across the cement floor. Ghost stood in the center, dressed like a banker but postured like a predator. Behind him, Ree Blackwood sat tied to a chair. Alive. Barely conscious. A blood-soaked bandage wrapped around his thigh. Ghost gestured toward two chairs facing him. Have a seat. Let's talk like men. Jeremiah spoke first. You don't get to pretend this is a negotiation. Ghost tilted his head. On the contrary. You both walked in here knowing what this place is. That means you want something. Micah's voice was flat. I came to end something. Meanwhile, 3 blocks away, Melanie Parker sat in a news van packed with live stream equipment. Naomi Keller, in a sling and fresh out of the hospital, monitored the feeds beside her. Micah's thermos relay had already activated. They were watching everything. Recording everything. Broadcasting to 600,000 people and rising. Inside the warehouse, Ghost circled the Carters like a lecturer in a class of fools. You people always think your anger is special, he said. Like your pain rewrites the rules of power. Jeremiah's stare didn't waver. Ghost leaned in toward Micah. I trained you to eliminate threats. Efficiently. Cleanly. Why choose chaos now? Micah didn't blink. Because this time, the threat is homegrown. Ghost's smile vanished. This city is a proving ground, he said. A test model. Vanguard's shield will expand nationwide. You're a speed bump. Jeremiah rose slowly. You call it a model. We call it an occupation. Ghost nodded to one of his operatives. Enough philosophy. Execute them. The man raised his weapon. And then everything went black. Back in the news van, Naomi activated Signal Protocol R, a frequency burst that disabled all local comms and night vision optics. Inside the warehouse, panic erupted. Gunmen fired blindly into darkness. Jeremiah hit the floor. Micah moved like water, low, fast, silent. In 30 seconds, 3 guards were down, zip-tied, weapons kicked away. Micah reached Ree and began cutting through his bindings. Floodlights flared on outside the warehouse, news vans, citizen live streamers, drone cams hovering like judgment angels. The trap had flipped. And Ghost was finally exposed. He tried to flee through the rear loading bay, but found himself face to face with Jeremiah, standing with the duffel in one hand. "No more running," Jeremiah said, steady and firm. Ghost raised a pistol. A shot rang out. Not from Jeremiah. From Micah, standing just behind Ghost, weapon aimed low. The bullet shattered Ghost's gun, sending him to his knees. Micah stepped closer. "You trained me well," he said. "But not well enough to see this coming." Ghost glared. "You're not a soldier anymore." Micah's voice was soft but lethal. "I'm something worse." By morning, the footage had gone viral. Ghost captured in failed operation, led every major news outlet. Every audio file, every plan, every tie to Vanguard's corrupt city takeover, streamed, archived, verified. Captain Renshaw was arrested before lunch. Vanguard's headquarters was raided by federal agents by dinner. Micah Carter was never seen on camera. Only his name, whispered like a legend. 2 weeks later, East Meridian no longer looked the same. The black SUVs were gone. The checkpoints dismantled. The Vanguard insignia stripped from every building and uniform. A federal task force occupied the old precinct offices now, sorting through boxes of evidence, scrubbing drives, interviewing whistleblowers. Captain Barry Renshaw had been indicted on 6 counts of civil conspiracy, abuse of authority, and obstruction of justice. Ghost, real name never publicly confirmed, was in a military detention facility awaiting charges for domestic espionage and war crimes. But not everyone was celebrating. Because justice, even when swift, left behind bruises that didn't show. Naomi Keller sat in the hallway of Memorial Medical Center, watching through a glass window as a young recruit read quietly to a small therapy group. She now wore no badge. Instead, she wore a blue windbreaker embroidered with the words, "Blue Line Integrity Project," a non-profit she had created to support officers who dared to speak up. "You're still limping," said a voice. She turned to see Dr. Williams, the hospital's director of psychological recovery. "It's healing," Naomi said. "Slower than I'd like." "Most things that matter do," he replied. She smiled faintly. "Tell that to the people who think I'm a traitor." "You're not a traitor. You're a start." In a different part of the city, Nina Renshaw stood behind a podium flanked by handmade campaign signs. Nina Renshaw, City Council, for the people. The daughter of the disgraced captain now ran on a platform of transparency, police accountability, and community reinvestment. "My father taught me what power without conscience looks like," she told the crowd. "But this city showed me what courage looks like, in trolley drivers, in whistleblowers, in kids with nothing but truth and Wi-Fi." Her numbers in the polls had climbed faster than expected. People weren't just voting for her. They were voting for a new story. Across town, in a garage newly converted into a youth training center, Rico Alvarez stood before a crowd of kids holding socket wrenches like magic wands. A hand-painted sign above them read, "Stevens Mechanics Academy, Skills for the Street and Beyond." Rico smiled, his arm now fully healed. He'd received a grant through a community fund established by whistleblower donations and public support following Melanie Parker's reporting. And though he didn't say it aloud, he kept a folded note in his wallet every day, written by Jeremiah Carter, sealed with oil-stained fingers. Bravery isn't about the fight. It's about the choice to show up. Back on Maple Street, the number 19 city trolley rolled slowly into its last stop of the day. The driver, a younger man, mid-30s, with calm eyes, stepped off and waved to a familiar figure sitting quietly on a bench nearby. Jeremiah Carter, dressed in a light sweater, cane by his side, nodded with a tired smile. They greeted each other without words. The city had renamed the trolley line 2 days ago. The Carter Line, in honor of service, courage, and dignity. Jeremiah never asked for it. He'd never wanted fanfare. But when he stood to leave, he saw a child board the trolley with his mother. The boy paused by the dedication plaque with Jeremiah's name. "Who's that?" he asked. The driver leaned down. "That's the man who stood when everyone else was too scared to." The trolley rolled on. In a private, rural clearing outside the city, Micah Carter stood alone at a grave marked only with a metal plate. Re Blackwood, friend, soldier, builder of firewalls and fortresses. Micah said nothing. Just placed a folded photo of them from a tour in Kandahar. Then turned, his jacket catching the breeze, and walked back toward a truck that blended with the woods. No medals. No goodbye. Micah had disappeared again, just as suddenly as he'd come home. But not without leaving something behind. In every home that had been touched by his story, in every neighborhood that had marched, filmed, or spoken up, copies of a slim self-published book began appearing. The Man on Line 19, by Jeremiah Carter. The dedication read, "To my son. And to every stranger who dared to see me." 6 months passed. Summer waned into fall. The sirens that once haunted East Meridian's nights now echoed less. The checkpoints never returned. The precinct was under new leadership, community-approved, federally monitored. The phrase, post-Vanguard, entered local vocabulary. But on a quiet street not far from where it all began, Jeremiah Carter sat on his rebuilt front porch, watching neighborhood kids chase a basketball down the sidewalk. His bruises had long faded. His limp remained. But so did something else, stillness. Not the stillness of fear. The stillness of having endured. The mail carrier approached with a padded envelope, no return address, no stamp. Inside, a small silver medal, polished to a mirror shine. And a note in sharp, military script. "You stood taller than I ever did. I'm proud to be your son." Jeremiah held it in both hands, trembling slightly. Then he looked out toward the horizon, where the sky was painted in early autumn golds and oranges. He didn't know where Micah was. Only that wherever he was still watching. At Stevens Mechanics Academy, Rico hung a framed newspaper clipping on the wall, the one with Naomi Keller standing beside Nina Renshaw, both smiling, arms linked, at a press conference after the new Community Oversight Committee was approved. Below it, a handwritten quote from Jeremiah. "The system didn't fix itself. People did." Melanie Parker's book hit shelves on a chilly Thursday in October. Shadow Protocol, Inside the Fall of Vanguard's Shield, debuted at number 1. But on page 1, the dedication was simple. "To the man on the trolley. And the son who came back for him." At the release event, a young reporter asked if she'd seen Micah since. Melanie just smiled. "If you're lucky," she said, "you don't see ghosts. You feel them." Far north, in a small border town known for its silence and snowfall, a stranger helped fix a bridge washed out by the rain. He didn't speak much. Just built quietly, moved quietly. Locals knew him only as Cal. He slept in a tiny cabin near the woods and left every morning before sunrise. But in the village's small cafe, a black and white photo hung behind the counter. It showed a city trolley, mid-frame. And a tall man in a metro uniform standing in front of it, arms folded. The plaque read, "Jeremiah Carter. The man who stood still when everyone else ran." Years later, a 10-year-old boy boarded the Carter line with his grandmother. He stopped in front of the plaque near the front window, reading it with wide eyes. Who was he? He asked the driver. The driver was new, but smiled warmly. "Mr. Carter," he said. "He was the bravest man I ever knew. And somewhere, under a sky that didn't need to be explained, Micah Carter watched the city he once fought to protect glow faintly in the distance. He didn't carry a rifle now. Just the weight of a promise kept. And the knowledge that sometimes, justice doesn't start with rage. Sometimes it starts with a quiet old man who chooses to stand. What I learned from the story. Courage doesn't always come from the young or the strongest. Jeremiah, a 70-year-old trolley driver, wasn't a hero by traditional standards. Yet his quiet dignity and willingness to stand up for others when it mattered made him a symbol of true bravery. Justice isn't always won by weapons or force, it starts with truth and perseverance. Micah Carter, a battle-hardened soldier, had to return home to fight a different kind of war, one rooted in corruption and silence. He learned that truth, strategy, and unity can be stronger than violence. Community solidarity is the strongest fortress. Everyday people like Rico, Naomi, Nina, and Melanie weren't warriors. But through knowledge, conviction, and courage, they helped turn the tide of an entire city. Blue Book: the lesson we all take away. Silence may feel safe, but prolonged silence can become complicity. And only when we choose to stand, even if we stand alone at first, does truth finally have a voice. This story teaches us that a small act of conscience can ignite a powerful movement. We don't need to be heroes, only brave enough to say no at the right time. Justice isn't automatic, it must be demanded, protected, and fought for.